So how do I prepare for an ethics submission? So the key areas that you need to consider so the key areas of consideration prior to submitting the research project to an ethics committee for review. These are the areas that I think are the most important. And I guess the first one here is you must have a solid research question. That is really important. You know, you need to know exactly what it is you're asking and what you want your research to achieve. The second priority, I think, is writing the protocol. Now, the protocol is the Bible of your study. Anybody should be able to pick up your protocol and take over from where you left off with that research and be able to conduct the research without question. It is the document that requires every detail about the research study, how you're handling participants, through to how you're handling the data, the legal stuff. Everything is encompassed in that one protocol. Fortunately, at Austin, we actually created our own protocol template, and I've left a copy of that link on our resources page. And what we've done with that protocol template, we've listed a number of sections with questions within that to act as a prompt for any researchers that perhaps weren't aware that this is kind of information that should be included. What we find with research protocols is that more information is much better than not enough information, which is why we created our own template just to help researchers understand the kind of things that the ethics committee look at, things that need to be included. And as I said, it is a really good prompt, because what we do find is that there are some things that perhaps researchers have not considered, and when they see it, they think, okay, actually that does apply to my research project. I will include information about that. Seeking advice from people like Sharon and I is really encouraged. And we really try and encourage researchers to come and speak to us well and truly before they're, even when they're writing the protocol, just for some guidance with the documentation and the submission process, but as well as thinking about things that perhaps you haven't thought of. So with respect to consent, the kind of consent forms that you should be using, who you need to be consenting, who you need to be talking to in the institute to be able to get these, to be able to get the research up and running. There's a whole range of information that we have access to and that we can certainly provide the guidance for. So we always encourage people to do that. The next thing we also encourage, and I've touched on this, is doing that early on in the piece. What we find is, what we do struggle with the most is people not coming to us early enough. Usually people come to us when they're already, I've got my research project, I need to start it within like 3 weeks. I've only got a month to do it in, and I need to write it up within 4 months. It already sends off alarm bells, because, just to get those things through and the time involved can be problematic. So at the moment, you're probably looking at, for a good ethics application to get through an ethics committee, whether it be a high risk or a low risk, the process is somewhat similar. Anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks. You need to allow 4 to 6 weeks to get ethics approval. That is just ethics. So you just need to be aware that these things do take time, and if you prepare well enough, you'll manage to get these things through in the right timeframes for your research. Research question and planning. So going back to one of my points, determining your research question, having a real solid research question is really important. What you need to do, and you need to show evidence of it, because the ethics committee do look for it, is completing a comprehensive literature review, and that's really important because, as I said, it does tie in with the 4 principles that we look at when it comes to ethical research. Again, plan your timeframes, sort out your resourcing, your budgets and your funding arrangements is really important. What the ethics committee do look for is whether or not the research is funded appropriately. It is not ethical to conduct research if the funds aren't in place to be able to complete it. Okay, the protocol itself, I have touched on this, but I'll just reiterate it because it's one of the most important documents that we look at. So the protocol is considered the most important for the reasons I've already outlined. But the protocol should include things like, you know, the study sites, introduction and background information, referring back to the literature review, your study objectives, your study design, the cohort of participants that you're looking to research. How are you going to make sure, how are you going to keep them safe? In the event that they want to withdraw, what's your withdrawal process? The statistical methods of the project, it is really important, and it may not be relevant to your research, but studies that are underpowered are considered unethical, because if you're not going to have the numbers to hit your research objective, it's not feasible to conduct the research. So your statistical method, how are you going to, you know, do you have the appropriate numbers to complete the research? You know, what methods are you going to use? What statistical methods are you going to use to analyze the data? That kind of information is really important. If you're collecting samples or you're collecting data, how are you going to store them? Are you going to store them in an appropriate fashion? I think it's really important, and I think a lot of people don't realise samples and data in our minds are somewhat similar. And, you know, back in the day when things were paper-based and, you know, we didn't have the technology that we do now, you know, ethics committees wanted to know right down to how you're going to store your samples or your data. You know, people would need to provide under lock and key, in a locked cabinet, in a locked office, on the 3rd floor of the, you know, of the building. That kind of information is really important. The ethics committee are very committed to ensuring patient data is kept secure and is handled appropriately. What we don't want to see is any breach of